Hey folks, Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalists, and yeah, as the title says, completely sucking yesterday in the IPSC shooting competition. Man, it is what it is. You have to be honest, and I do this in the channel as well. There's no other way I know of doing things but being absolutely completely honest with you folks. So yesterday I went for the first time in a very long time, and man, did I suck. We had 4 stages. One of them I completely missed like 5 plates that you had to like kneel on one wall and kneel and shoot those, and I completely forgot about it being in one side, went to the other, kneeled, and didn't find anything because the plates were on the other side. Anyway, just things that happen when you're not training enough, you're not practicing enough. On the other hand, it was 4 stages. One of them I ended up second to last, the other one about the same, the other one and somewhat in the middle, and one of those I actually ended up first. So I actually ended up first in that stage, but the other ones, this is I'm doing the video also because it's the perfect example of how sometimes you can do very well, sometimes you can do very bad, even in the same day. It's just a matter of how well you approach things, and honestly, how much you practice. If I practice more than I do, I probably would have done better overall in all of them. Not just doing ending up number 1 in one and sucking completely in the rest, or somewhere in between. So it's also a matter of being honest with yourself, and a matter of dragging your ass, going there and seeing what you see. There's so many people that overestimate their capabilities. Oh, I'm a great shot. Okay, really? Okay, how well did you do in your last competition? I don't do competition. I'm a real warrior. That's just playing games. Okay, dude, if you cannot even do well when playing these games, then your capabilities of actually performing when your life is on the line, it's just a question mark for you. You don't even have somewhat of an answer, of how precise or how good you're gonna be. Also, I went with my son, with my oldest son, trying to get him involved in the sport aspect of all of this. He had a good time, I think, and people were very glad to see him, very positive, especially some of the older guys happy about seeing new blood there in the game, which is, it's nice, it's encouraging. And my advice here for all of you guys is, if you haven't done this already, IPSC a competition or some other practical shooting sport that you have locally, give it a try. And if you didn't like it the first time, sometimes you see that the community is not all that welcoming, give it another try and go at it again and again. Usually it's sometimes you find very tight groups, and they're not that open to outsiders. I mean, put yourself in their position. They don't know who you actually are. They have no idea who you are, so that makes perfect sense. Sometimes you have better experiences off the bat, sometimes you have to work at it a little bit more. Either way, go try, and the reasons are several. Of course, you're going to be practicing something that is important. Being able to shoot fast and accurately, it's a big advantage, especially if you ever have to use this kind of skills for self-defense. Yes, it's not the same thing to practice combat self-defense and practicing sport. My experience over the years in different countries is that most people that are extremely serious about these things, talking tactical military, police, those guys do everything. They do the defensive stuff, they do the combat tactical stuff, and they do the sports stuff as well. Anything that involves shooting and accuracy and speed and all of that is going to be a big plus to your skills. So it's yet another tool. There are certain things that kind of are counterintuitive, or even some things that are big no-nos in self-defense that you do all the time in sports shooting, because you're not worried about someone shooting at you, right? That also has to be said. Now, this is not a reason to completely discard and just not do it, but keep that in mind. When you're leaning on stuff, when you're going around cover and that sort of thing, you're not working on that as you would do in actual self-defense. It's it's the nature of the game, let's put it that way, where cleaning this again, I don't know why, but while I'm talking, why not? So you'll do some things that you probably won't do, and there's something to be said about muscle memory, habits, and repeating those. But I think that the advantages greatly outweigh the disadvantages. If you're gonna be saying, I'm gonna be getting killed because I'm gonna be going around a corner not tactically enough, man, okay, that's an opinion. I think that the speed and accuracy you're going to be getting is going to be greatly outweighing the slight risk of you screwing around, something like that. I think that's it's quite more advantageous to have that speed and accuracy. I noticed it as well myself when I was shooting, especially anything that's up close, boom, 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 boom. You just do it very, very fast once you get used to it, even on a somewhat medium level like the one I am, and even lower than that. But still, something that you notice is that you're gonna be shooting faster and more accurately if you get involved in this sort of stuff. Great activities so as to meet like-minded people as well. That is a big advantage. And socializing, it's not just about shooting and thinking of combat and gunfighting and such. Maybe the biggest advantage of all of this that for most people you have is going out there talking with people. There's a lot of lonely people, especially at a certain age. There's a lot of people that need to socialize. Man, it is a matter of health. It's gonna be mental health, even physical health. If you're socializing, you have a group of people which you share a common interest and you have a good time, that's huge for a lot of people. Much more important than your self-defense skills and how likely it is of you fighting it with, well, which is still something that I am very much interested in. But I can sympathize, and I can be I can observe that this, for a lot of people, it is a big thing. It has a great impact in their life, having that social group in which they share a common interest and they look forward to every week and so on. So yes, that's very important. Little lessons that you learn along the way. I noticed how this is getting more and more of a sporting thing than rather practical shooting skills, as it was originally intended in terms of self-defense. It's becoming more and more like that, and you see the type of guns is more heavily towards the open category rather than production. I shoot with my Glock. Production, which is your standard issue type of firearm, would be production. But more and more you see these guns that look like sewing machines, huge things, and people work on the loads, they reload, which reloading is great. It's fantastic. But you notice that guys go for the bare minimum factor of power, and sometimes you see those guns jam. And they jam because of the reloads that are just too light, or they jam because of the kind of guns that you're using. My son was asking me, okay, if folks use those for competition, why isn't that you don't use those guns for self-defense as well? There's a little bit of a crossover there, some defensive guns, especially with the red dots and such, but usually when you're talking about a race gun, it is way too big, it's way too complex in terms of how much more likely you are to hit something in the middle of a fight, which is different. Fighting is different from sport shooting. That's a lot more likely to happen, and also the gun is a lot more likely to jam as well. And people will say, no, you have no idea, I have my CZ Shadow 500 or whatever thing you're shooting, never jammed it. Okay, I mean by far, I lost count of how many times I've seen things jam, and it was most often one of these open custom guns that are with all the bells and whistles, rather than a basic Glock with factory ammunition. Even some of the guys commented that there's a huge fireball when I was shooting, just because I'm using factory. They are not used to seeing a lot of factory ammunition being shot. They're used to seeing some of these very light reloads, and it is, each one, knows what he's doing and why he's doing, and having fun is fantastic. And if you enjoy the sport, that's great. But again, I feel it's going away. It's more and more into the sports side of things, rather than a discipline in which you practice realistic stuff. And you can do either one. You can do like I do. You shoot production with your standard firearm, and you just deal with that. Yes, you're not going to be, there's no comparison. You're not even competing against the same guys. Even if you do the same stage, your score sheet, you're going to be with other guys that are shooting production. You're not going to be competing directly against those. But there is the overall the overall result where everyone likes, to be as close to the top as possible. And if you maybe, I think that there's also this error, this mistake of thinking that just because you have a fancy gun, you're going to be shooting better. I mean, I've noticed many times that people that just shoot well, they shoot well with everything, with anything. It's only at a certain point where, yeah, there's a big difference because you have a specific type of gun and that gives you a certain advantage. When you are at that level, sure, yeah, why not? But for most cases, it's mostly about the shooter. If you shoot well, if you're fast, if you're very good, you're likely to clean out that stage better than anyone with a fancier gun. It's really about the Indian, not the arrow. So that's something to keep in mind as well. You can also get into something very expensive. Some of these guns cost a damn fortune. If that's what you want, by all means. If you're more of a self-defense practical type of guy, maybe that doesn't really make a lot of sense for you. At least for me, it doesn't. And I absolutely respect those that have a different opinion on all of this. So yeah, folks were glad that I was taking my son, and he was happy as well. Little things you learn along the way about shooting ammunition that is not yours. My son found a round there on the floor. He was like, "Is this yours?" "No." "Okay." "Are you going to be shooting it?" "No." I explained, you don't shoot ammunition you haven't reload yourself. And you see problems with people with their own reloads. And a guy was telling me about this one time that he had a projectile stuck in the chamber and the other round push it off. The kind of thing that can blow up a gun. It usually happens when people do their own reloads, and the more careful you are, the less likely you are to have problems. And still, problems are far more likely to happen when you do your own reloads rather than just buying a box of ammunition. Is it cheaper? Of course it is cheaper, and it's very cool to actually do your own reload specifically tuned to what you want to achieve with that. That's all great, but there's also that to be said about it. You're not going to be having reloads for self-defense. I don't think that's a good idea at all. So when it actually comes down to it, you're going to be shooting factory ammunition with this kind of power, with this kind of muzzle flash, and powder burn out of the barrel and so on. So it's good. I was also thinking about, trusting people with ammunition that you don't know. That is, that's a big question to deal with as well. How comfortable are you going to be going about, handling? I mean, I've shot crappy reloads, some of the crappiest reloads you've ever seen, but it was out of necessity. I couldn't afford anything else, so that was it. But whenever possible, I think that quality factory ammunition is the way to go. Anyway, guys, just a few thoughts and a few comments on some of this stuff. You always learn something new. You always have. Maybe if you don't learn something new, you just reevaluate some of your some of the things you do, the purpose of it, and some knowledge is always there. It's always better to actually go out there and try stuff out, see how well or how bad you're doing. And if you're doing well, by all means, you continue doing that. If you need to work a little bit more, you do that too. That's going to be all for now, folks. If you're interested in this sort of thing, I cover a lot of it in terms of self-defense, firearms, and even some of this stuff in terms of how I see the difference. Anyway, regarding self-defense, shooting, firearms, and all this stuff, a lot of that in Street Survival Skills. This is the Spanish version of Street Survival Skills, but you'll have the links for my books there below in the description of the video. Have an awesome day. See you on our next video. Take care.